9 to noon today. We will unfurl some of our NFL draft-related talkbacks via the free iHeartRadio app and the baby microphone, and 30 seconds to opine on whatever is tickling your fancy with the National Football League Draft Round 1, 15 days from today. Once again, it's the free iHeartRadio app. Those of you who are of the crafty veteran ilk, you know how to navigate it, find the microphone, and offer up takes. But we have tickets to the draft party that will take place at U.S. Bank Stadium to be given away to a talk back that is selected during the course of each and every weekday, 9 to noon. And you can start filing those reports anytime you want via the free iHeartRadio app. And we will play some back in the final hour. And that's when the coronation of a ticket-winning champion transpires. Here's Ben Leber at Nacho Leber via Twitter or the X Machine. Twin Cities Live, 3 to 4:30 today on Channel 5. Twin Cities Live, 3 to 4:30 on Channel 5. He is the co-host of TCL. Yeah, you know we. And it's a Wednesday with Nacho, which is cool. That's very, very cool. Thanks for helping, and good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. What a weird feeling it is.
Body clock off?
Body clock is off.
Yeah.
You know, power trip this morning. We shifted everything because of the power trip guys in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. You're at TCOPC tomorrow. You were nice and flexible to have me come in today since I was already here. So today truly is a Thursday on a Wednesday. So it's good to see you.
This hopefully for this week is the last time that I bring this up, but it's just working on me in a way where, like, with stories I read and then there's some people with whom I chat, it's not percolating with others the way it is me, and that's not the first time this has happened, but it involves a former Vikings general manager, Rick Spielman.
Yeah.
And I mean, you played on the team when he was the GM. You and we both know him personally. It's so antithetical and out of character as a general manager or a media member for the former GM to come out and say, great question. I think they should do this and they should move there and they should take this guy. My man came out and said they will. like he's been like the eagle landed or the birdie sang or he's been slid the right answer. And I'm not one to say it's the right answer, but I'm certainly not one to say it's not. And you know, that was with the CBS Sports podcast. Then your guy, Charles Davis, who's salt of the earth. I love Charles, just like you. With the 3013 podcast, they're talking about the Vikes, and just out of nowhere, he spitballs. Well, I mean, with this contract situation, paraphrasing, with this contract situation, they should trade Justin Jefferson. Well, that blew up. You know, it's, you know, the way I put it is, and we'll see if you agree with this. Knowing Rick the way we do, if his predecessor, you know, like say Rick got the job, he's into his third year, like Kwesi. If his predecessor, 2 years removed from the job, was doing all this stuff involving his team, he'd be infuriated. And you know, I'm not saying that it'd be like, heads are going to roll if I find out who slid this information to former GM du jour. I'm just saying he wouldn't like it, and he's doing it, and it was kind of loud early in the week, and good morning.
Yeah, I mean, putting myself in Kwesi's shoes, it would be a little unnerving because I think everybody wants to keep all the information in-house. And, you know, I get it. We're not trading nuclear secrets here. Yeah. It is just sports. Yeah. But it is their livelihood. It is important to them, and thus you want it to be secret. And there's so many voices and so many people in these decision-making rooms that you want to feel like you can trust people. And that's the biggest thing with everything, right? Same thing in this building, same thing in any building. You want to feel like I can have dialogue and we can make decisions and it doesn't leave this boardroom, and I can have some confidence and I can trust people. And when you feel like more and more of this stuff, whether it's true or not, and you know, because we're in a big take time, I mean, people are just going to throw stuff out, and you might hear something you're like, well, we did talk about that scenario. Did that leak, or are they just thinking about the big picture and thinking about what we may do? I think you can drive yourself a little paranoid, which is why I think a lot of times these guys really don't pay attention to what Rick Spielman's saying. It might hit their desk, days afterwards, but I think they really try to keep themselves insulated because you could drive yourself crazy of is that leaked information? Is that them just being smart? You got guys like Louis Riddick who are, they got their ear to the ground and they can just hear things, right? And then they can just start moving pieces around in their own head and okay, well, this might make sense because I've been in that situation on draft day and how to strategize and do all this other stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, did somebody tell Louis Riddick that what we're doing?
Right.
So I think that he could get a little frustrated with it. I think in the end though, there's been every scenario thrown out there that they're probably most likely chuckling and laughing at the absurdities that have been said. Yeah. And there might be a couple that end up on draft night being correct. And we're all going to do it. We're like, see, I was saying that 2 months ago, and I said that 2 weeks ago, and I tweeted and posted about that, 48 hours ago. And we're all going to try to stick our flag in some sort of take that we've all had. So somebody's going to be right. I don't think that they really care that much. I think the Charles Davis, Justin Jefferson talk, to me, if that was true, it's ludicrous to me. It absolutely is ludicrous to me. You don't do that to once in a generational player that's young, is kind of the identity of your team and your offense, seemingly does everything the right way. I don't think you do that to one of those type of guys.
The linebackers playing fast on a Wednesday. It's Ben Leber at Nacho Leber via Twitter. Twin Cities Live, 3 to 4:30 today on Channel 5 if you want to watch Nacho. All right, well, it's interesting what you said about the worried about secrets leaking and draft-related scenarios leaking and, the trust and keeping that everything in-house. I mean, it's as duplicitous as you possibly can imagine because the same people in the same houses around the NFL are going to call certain media members and just lie to them.
Yeah.
And be like, and slide little nuggets to them to benefit their team and their livelihood. And that's the competitive nature of the business. But they're going to demand honesty and trust and forthright conviction with your trust. And then call somebody a lie. It's crazy.
But it's hard though because these NFL insiders. Then I'll pick on Schefter just because he's the top of the heap. I mean, when you got a guy that's on top of the mountain, I mean, he's easy to analyze. He's fantastic at his job. He's developed trust from everybody across the board, but he gets played and he has to play the game, and it's unfortunate because even in a football world, even in an entertainment sport, it still becomes politicized in a way that we hate that our politicians get bought off. And they become shills for whatever organization or PAC that they're getting money for. Mm-hmm. That's really what these guys do. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been, and I talk about him because he's been busted with that. Like, people have called him out for that. When somebody gives him information, let's say the Patriots have been giving him information about free agents they're looking at, and they're like, we'll let you have the inside scoop. We'll do this. By doing that, there's an informal handshake deal that you're in bed with us. So when we need you to throw out this information from Elliott Wolf that we're very high on JJ McCarthy and we love him, we're going to take him. That's all information they're going to say to Schefter, hey man, we need you to say this. Yeah. And remember all those other bumps that we've been giving you? Right. We need you to give us a little something.
What a wonderful tie to politics. Just an absolute beautiful tie with things transpiring at the legislature this time of the year with a bunch of different entities. Ben Leber, 9 to noon on a Wednesday. So just to land the plane here on the Spielman thing is, again, it wasn't, he was at the combine and it's like, I saw this and I've heard this, I like this, and Kevin O'Connell and the middle zone concept and everything. I think this guy would be perfect, and this would be overpaying, but this is what I think would be perfect. But instead it was they are going to overpay for J.J. McCarthy. So Do you think he's accurate? Forget the opinion on the overpay. And I saw your tweet, by the way, which was like, who cares if the guy's a rock star? It's, ain't nobody going to be talking about that. No. X amount of, like, I'd forgotten what Buffalo gave up for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Now, I know they can't get past the AFC Championship game, but I still take Josh Allen 10 of 10 times on this team. But with all of that said, do you think he'll be accurate? Do you think that somebody with cachet like that, who has access to people even like you and I don't have access to, we may have access, but we may not get the answer. Do you think he's right?
Yeah, I do think he's right. I absolutely think he's right. And I think that there's going to be an absolute intent by the Vikings to move up. Now, again, whether or not that happens, whether or not on draft night, as we talked about before, I think even last week, about how if you're one of these teams, if you're Arizona, if you're New England, if you're the Chargers, you don't do a deal now. You do a deal when everybody gets, very desperate.
And antsy, yeah.
And antsy. And so you do a deal as close to the draft as possible, and most likely on draft night. And as we saw that Monty Austinfort viral video of him working the phones on draft night and stuff like that, that's how quickly these things can happen. And all of those scenarios that happened in that conversation, in that video, are all things that they pre-planned. They do mocks and they do dry runs and they rehearse all of that stuff, every movement of that, and who I'm going to call next and what you're going to do and what your job is going to do.
Wow.
So
like daily, I think, teams.
Yeah.
So just off that, it's so like you're in a draft room and it's like, all right, let's have it fall this way. Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy second.
Yeah.
And then like how you react from that, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It definitely is. And, what we're going to have to figure out, going back to what Spielman said, is there truly going to be intent to move up? Which sometimes we don't even know. Yep. If they don't happen to move up and we're like, what is going on? Why are we still at 11? We might find out that night. We might find out 2 weeks later that, yep, we tried desperately. This was the offer, and then the Raiders moved up and they took that spot. I mean, the good thing for us is we have 23.
Right.
That's our biggest weapon. Everybody's worried about the Broncos. Broncos may have to give up a player. When it comes to draft capital, this draft, they don't have a lot.
Yeah.
They don't have a second rounder. They've got a first and a third, a fourth, 3 fifths and 2 sixths. I mean, not a ton.
Rob, that's I mean, I hadn't thought of that. That's so sharp, in my opinion, you said that, because they're so desperate out Denver way. I'm not kidding you, man. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, we want that 3 so badly. Mm-hmm. We will give you 12. We will give you next year's first rounder, and we will give you Patrick Surtain the second. I'm not kidding you. I mean, they're that depth.
Yeah, I've definitely heard. Yeah.
If you're offering me that corner, who, he backed off fell off a little bit last year compared to his rookie year, I'd take him 10 out of 10 times. Mm-hmm. And you get a couple of firsts for that spot, plus that guy who's ready to go. Wow.
Let me throw a scenario out to you, because we don't have, going back to what Charles Davis said, I think it's preposterous to think that you'd want to move Justin Jefferson, even though he's sitting on a monumental deal.
Right.
Huge deal, maybe historic. I think he deserves it, and I think he's earned that right to get that offer. And I think the Vikings should do it, because he is the face until hopefully you get the quarterback situation figured out. He is the face of this organization from a culture standpoint, from an on-field performance standpoint. He's the guy. So let me throw this out to you, because we don't have a lot of, if you're the Denver Broncos, we don't have a lot of player equity to give up. What if somebody said, what if the Patriots said, or what if Arizona said? Arizona most likely is going to look at wide receiver. What if they said, give us Jordan Addison?
And 2 picks.
And 2 picks.
Ooh.
You swap us at 11, you give us 23.
Yeah.
You maybe sweeten the deal with a 5th or something, whatever.
I'd be more apt to go 11 and next year's first and keep that 27 so I can get one of these nice wide receivers on a rookie deal. Well, yeah, because I'm giving up one.
Because you're giving up one.
Wow.
What are you doing? I don't know a whole lot of the guys that we'd be willing to give up.
Yep.
I mean, it would be painful, it would hurt. But if you're talking about, it seems like to me the last 3-4 years, these guys coming out of college are wide receiver might be the easiest position to transition from.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
What you're getting on Saturday. Like Puka Nacua. I mean, and it wasn't a Saturday. I think it was a Friday. But, I mean, he didn't come in and just, like, help. He came in and starred.
Yeah. And so
because he fits what they do.
Exactly. Because he fits what they're doing. And the thing is, like, there's so many varieties of offensive systems in college that you're going to find these guys. You might find a slot receiver out of Northern Illinois, and maybe a late round, and he's a star because he fits in your system.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and the thing is, it could be a stupid hypothetical because Arizona could be thinking the same thing. They're like, well, why? We're not going to ask for a guy, that's already 1 year in the league when we know that we could get, we could swap picks and then we'll get your 23rd and we'll go draft another wide receiver that we think can play day one. So I'm just throwing those out there that I don't think it's Justin. I don't think it's Darisaw. I don't think it's who else you have that you think would be, really good bait for a team to jump onto. We just don't have it compared to maybe a Surtain.
Well, Ben Leber at Nacho Libre via X. It's subterfuge season. So a lot of these things that we read or we hear or we see, and you've laid it out with Schefter, which is top of the top, best of the best. Mm-hmm. And it can go both ways. I mean, he'll scratch a back and he'll get his back scratched. And that's just how that game works. But then there are lesser secondary type names that, like, I'm not going to say them, but like we've heard of them, but we just don't, it's not the go-to to be like, oh, Gosling from the Dallas Morning News, the Goose. He's 88% when he puts out a mock draft on day one of the draft. Well, that was like Gridiron Gospel Creed back in the day when he would do it. Some of these secondary ancillary names, when it's splash season, when it's subterfuge season, when it's draw people to your website season. Mm-hmm. I mean, I read three different spots today, and I had heard this. I mean, it's kind of a low-hanging fruit situation with Drake May, but I mean, they really, really went into it hard. His footwork, where it's like, okay, that may be right, and you know more about this than me, and I'll land the plane with the question, but it's kind of was the same thing per source. Sources say, all right, Shefty can per source and I'm good. There are some who can per source and I believe them and I believe the veracity and validity of the source. It's so easy to be like, that's why I'm glad Merrill Hodge came out and said Drake May's the kind of quarterback that gets coaches fired. He came out and said it and you can see him.
Yeah.
He's not a source. So the source stuff sucks. You know what I mean? And I guess you got to do it that way, specifically if you're second, third, fourth tier trying to bring people to your site or your podcast or whatever. But it's all about Drake May's feet. And like when I'm reading it, I'm like, well, and here's the question. Isn't that something high-end coaching staffs can like work out relatively quickly, or is it problematic?
I think it's easier to work out than straight up accuracy.
Yeah.
We hear all the time that accuracy in KOC says it's like his number one trait in looking for quarterbacks. I've heard from other quarterbacks, not just some of the experts and the pundits, but working on your accuracy as you transition from college to the NFL, where the windows get tighter, the defenders are faster, and all this other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't have the accuracy in college, either it's impossible to fix in the NFL or it's going to take a number of years for you to fix other mechanical things to make your accuracy better. So that being said, is if you have poor footwork, which they think is quote unquote poor footwork, but your accuracy is still good, I think that you're just nitpicking at this point. I think that I've personally gone away from looking at when I'm evaluating some of these quarterbacks in college. It's like they may have a funky throwing motion. They may throw sidearm. They may throw a little bit like Phillip Rivers. They may throw off platform. The thing is, if they're productive, they're accurate, and they show arm strength, and the lack of quote unquote mechanics prohibits them from some of those other traits, then I think it's an issue. But if you're productive and you're getting the ball there and your eyes are good and you're making all the reads and stuff, I mean, look at Jordan Love this year. He's mimicking what he's seen from Brett Favre and from Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers got it from Brett Favre, and they were playground built. They have terrible mechanics. I mean, if you look at Aaron Rodgers and you look at the way he learned from Brett Favre,
yeah,
that's the mechanics you don't want to have in a young quarterback.
Right.
But they're successful.
Yeah.
So I think it's the time of year where we're going to nitpick at footwork and arm angle and arm slot and arm this and all that. And like, can the dude play?
Yeah.
I don't know. Can he play? Can he process? Can he pick up the defense? Does he anticipate well? And does he throw the ball accurately with velocity? That's all I really care about. All this other, like, he's got to look like a prototypical quarterback. Does that ever really work out all the time? No, it doesn't.
He's Ben Leber, and I'm Paul Allen. Around the corner, the Minnesota Vikings begin off-season workouts next week. What does that mean in the early stages of the off-season program? And to some more draft conversation. You're listening to 9 to Noon. Maybe in subterfuge season, maybe there's like somebody with the Minnesota Vikings who, has been there quite some time and maybe like they were working under general manager Rick Spielman and they had a decent relationship, but they always like kept going for pay raises, things like that, or, trying to elevate themselves. And maybe they were getting stonewalled and like they harbored ill will. So maybe over the weekend, somebody's like, hey, how you been? Great seeing you at the combine. Oh, by the way, it's going to work like this. And it does work like that, but it's not McCarthy. It's May. And put him on the old Flammapalooza.
Oh, boy.
Long shot, but not a no shot because it's subterfuge season.
Yeah, well, this is the season to do all of that stuff.
And it happens all the time.
Yeah, it really does.
Now, the Vikings begin their off-season workouts next week. So, like, what do they do during the early stages of these workouts? Like, what is important?
Well, I think
it might be important this year with all these new players.
Well, that's true. I think with all the new players and stuff, it is going to be a great bonding time. They really come together. I've always said, and I've said it before, that this was actually my favorite time of year. And, we were checking in mid-March and not mid-April. So we had a longer off season, and everybody talks about when they retire, the thing that they miss the most is the locker room. It's the guys, it's the bantering, it's the hanging out. It's you're getting paid to hang out with your friends, and we had 4 or 5 more weeks of that when I was playing, and I think it's important. We would come together as a team more. And I liked, going out there and working with the guys and sweating and running stupid hills and wanting to throw up, and you laugh at each other and you're like, oh man, you just like when you're in the muck together, it just kind of brings you together. And so, they have 4 or 5 weeks less of what I experienced. And I think the game sort of suffers a little bit because of that, because you're not in there doing football movements as much. A lot of soft tissue injuries, I think, early in camp and all that is because guys aren't focused on football movements. They're out there doing their CrossFits and their all this other stuff and these alternative workouts. But they'll get back in there. These guys will get to know each other. I think the first phase of it, they can't even really be around the coaches.
Yeah, that's right.
They can't.
There can't be any coaching on the field or something.
They're not going to be on the field. I think
Right.
they can have player-led, quote unquote, player-led meetings. Which is basically just the coach giving you the syllabus. and the daily schedule. Like, okay, I want you guys to watch this series of film that I broke down. There's 20 plays here.
Yeah.
Here's some notes. Leaders take over the room.
Wow.
So I think
Can
there's
you
a little bit
imagine
of that.
if it was like that when Corey Javis played and he got to be the player coach in the room with the film and the technique and the 3-cone shuttle and all that? Holy cow.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's always going to be shenanigans, inside if it's player led. But the thing is, like, I'm jealous. I miss this time of year. I miss the time of getting up early, getting a weight workout in, getting some conditioning in, hanging out. Now these guys have these super fancy performance nutrition centers, and they'll like get their shakes, and they'll get their cold plunges and their hot and cold saunas and all this,
Don't be envious.
They get the pampering, and I never got pampered as much as they get pampered.
But you had shakes, and you had hot tub, and you had cold tub.
Not really.
Now, Tito chose 17 days in the Bahamas, 2 days before he had to start running, and then you got there, and it was hard.
Yeah, that is the funny thing is, like, I always took care of myself in the true off season.
Yeah.
But inevitably, you get into that first week of practice or first week of off-season training. You're like, oh my God, I got muscles that I didn't even know could be so sore. Like, you could work out so hard, but there's just nothing like some of the workouts that we went through.
Have you ever? You can mention names or not required. Have you ever, during your playing career, were you ever like in the early stages of these off-season workouts, days 1, 2, or 3, when people start showing up? Were you ever next to a coach or players or something as somebody walked in? They're like, dude, what in the hell happened to you?
Oh, my God, all the time. All the time.
It just looks like a different guy because they're so out of shape.
And the thing is, it happened. It happened a lot. But again, because we had 4 or 5 weeks of extra strength and conditioning time, I don't think the coaches are that worried. They're like, you know what? You went and enjoyed yourself. As long as we, especially if it's a vet that they know, like, yeah, this is what he does. Mm-hmm. This is what Paul Allen does. He loves his Baconators from Wendy's. He has 2 or 3 a day.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to come in and he's going to be about 15 pounds overweight. But we know that he's going to work his butt off once he gets in, once he gets checked in, he gets dialed in. And by the time we get to OTAs, minicamp, and certainly by training camp, you're going to be in great shape. And I do understand a little bit where the NFLPA sort of pushed back on having such a long off season because, you do as an athlete, you want to peak at the right time. And if you're going, we were going hard on the second week of March. And by the time you got to OTAs in May, you're like, I'm already pretty tired. It's like, we've been going pretty hard here.
But it's the mental time, Nacho.
I know. It's like, we've been going pretty hard here. So it is kind of nice that they get more of a true ramp up to the season.
All right. Lastly, just what do you think of this, top of your head? Because we haven't drafted. Free agency with the A topics pretty much done. I mean, you got Xavier Howard out there. You got a few out there who may, and that's also interesting to me that the team has money. Flores coach Xavier Howard. He's a press man corner.
I know.
And there's a need here, and he's like still out there. So maybe it's a money thing or a term thing or whatever. Xavier, from what I hear, is still pretty good. But the DraftKings unleashed season win totals before the draft. They're like the one of the first groups to do that. There are betting limits on it, from what I understand. So, you can't see something, know who they're going to draft, know who's injured, nobody else does, and it's going to be longer than everybody, and then like crush for $50,000 on an over. Yeah. You can't do that. But nevertheless, it had Green Bay and Detroit each 10.5 wins. Go over or under 10.5 wins. Behind that, the Bears 8.5. The over was, the over was bet more than the under at 8.5. So they're kind of begging you to bet the under 8.5. And lo and behold, there we had the old Vikings at 6.5. Hit us with a freaking, it's a 6.5 over under right now on the Vikings. It's per DraftKings. I saw it over the weekend.
Come on.
It's 6.5. Well, they won 7 last year, so they went eking by.
Yeah, but come on,
we 7.
Such volatility at quarterback.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. Our defense is going to be better.
Yeah.
And even if it's Sam Darnold, like really, I'm definitely going the over on that.
I ain't kidding you. It's 6.5 right now. We'll see what happens after the draft. Fire a bullet on TV today. I know you will. Thanks for the flexibility. You got a podcast with Gabe Henderson today?
I do. Yeah. I'm actually headed over to TCOPC right now.
And I'll be there tomorrow. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah joins 9 to noon tomorrow from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Gabe Henderson will be on the radio show very early in the equation. All right, Ben, have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
That's Ben Leber. I'm Paul Allen. News due Nord is next.
Ben.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. It is News du Nord, and it is presented by The Casino at Canterbury Park. It's poker, blackjack, and table games all year round. And what is it, the 10th of April? So we are just over a month away from live racing, where you're stacking those pick 3s and 4s and 5s as long as you can on as many horses as you possibly can at one of the best family environments in the state of Minnesota. You can check out all you need to know about feeling the felt, betting the ponies, and doing all of that. Just go to CanterburyPark.com. The Minnesota Twins, well, they're 3-6. And you can flip that, and that's the score line you saw last night at Target Field. Swept by the visiting Los Angeles. Well, not swept. I think they got one more today, but in the end, 6-3 the final last night. Glasnow, as the hits keep on coming, 14 strikeouts for Mr. Glasnow and the Dodgers last night. That ties his career high, and it was a pair of 3-run shots by the Dodgers that were the story. And 6 rip. Twins hit 3 solo shots later in the game to give the home crowd at least something to mildly murmur about. It was Jeffers, Correa, and Kirilloff with those solo homers. The Twins are now like 0 for 28, maybe even worse at this stage with runners in scoring position over the last 4 games. It's absolutely brutal. And you look down again, just 9 games. So sample size game, etc. Many games to go, but it's Carlos Santana. Excited about all those homers he hit a year ago. Well, he's 4 for 29. How about Eddie Julian? Moving on from Polanco. Love Eddie. He's 3 of 28. Willie Castro, 3 of 27. Mr. Jeffers, 3 of 25. Hitting's a massive issue for the Minnesota Twins. They need to fix it in a hurry. And that was just another part of the story last night as the Dodgers very much in control of it from start to finish.
And now they got so it went Glasnow, the former Tampa Bay Rays star at times. You know, with the way the Dodgers play, they could Shohei Ohtani, Teoscar Hernandez. We talked about him yesterday. It's a side piece in free agency, but I mean, he's good. He's like, above middling, but not great. I mean, it's a quality. It would be the best free agent pickup this offseason the Minnesota Twins would have had, and a lot of other teams too. So he goes to the Dodgers. Likewise for that pitcher Glasnow, who, when you jump up 6-0 and you're facing the Twins and they're going punchless into the night, there is a chance that your performance looks better than it really is when you get into it and you break down the all 18. But nevertheless, he was solid. Now you got Miller. I mean, Bobby Miller has been so highly touted for the last 3 years, and for a fair amount of the time, he's come through. And he's a nice pitcher, but he's not as good as, in my opinion, as what people expected him to be a few years ago. But now you're going against a team that has a chance to go punchless into the day. The 0 for 28 consecutive with runners in scoring position. It's 0 for the last 28, like Nordo said. Byron Buxton's strikeouts. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's starting to, as the kids would say, become a thing.
I think he has 11 right now.
Really? They need a win. I mean, they need a W, if only to break the ice of things through which they're going at this moment. But it may not be reality, but it is a fact that things like this and bad hitting situations, I mean, they've happened to so many teams through the annals of time in Major League Baseball. In April, when you flip that thing to May, if it doesn't get a little bit better, then you're moderately concerned. If it's still like this in June, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of the marathon game, is you have a long time to work through these.
It's a nooner today, and if you didn't get to see Chris Paddock last week against the Brewers, you'll get to see him today. Paddock, of course, returns from injury, gets some relief work last year, and now he's starting 4 innings just against the Brewers last week in a victory. But it's dicey, though. I mean, he's given up a couple of hits each inning that he's pitched. We'll see what he has today against Bobby Miller. Could be a tough one at Target Field. So that's a nooner. Tonight is the night 9 p.m., the battle for the first overall seed in the Western Conference kind of boils down to tonight, PA, and game in hand, advantage, tiebreakers, etc. The Minnesota Timberwolves are at the Denver Nuggets, and that's a 9 p.m.-ish tip-off right here on your home for the Howl. You'll get to hear it on the Fan tonight. And we had a shorty. We've talked to Chris Finch already this week, but they did handle business last night, courtesy of 51 points from this guy. Here's a highlight.
Ant's got it right side. With the left hand. Trying to turn the corner on Gill. Gets into the paint. Runs it up off glass. He got it for 2 more. 51 for Anthony Edwards. A new career high. First time in his career he's gone for 50-plus.
Ooh, 51 points from Ant. And it was dicey at halftime. But then as the Wolves have done so many times this year, it was pedal down into the third. Just ran the Wizards out of the gym. And they cruised to a victory at the finish line. And now tonight, back-to-back against the Nuggets. Here we got a Shams bomb. We got a Shams bomb, PA. Shams, Charania, The Athletic. He's reporting it is expected that Karl Anthony Towns is set to return for one of the final 3 games. Could be tonight or over the weekend with Atlanta and then Phoenix in the finale. My question to you on this, though, is what kind of challenge is it, do you think, where they want Cat back? You know, the team ultimately can be better with Cat. There's no doubt about that. But in the same sense, it's like you gotta go to work. You're battling to maintain top 3 in the West. You're hammering on beating good teams. You're struggling in other areas, but you have figured out how to live for a month and a half without Cat. Yeah. Now he's back. Is there a challenge to reintegrating Cat this close in front of a potential playoff series?
My guess would be the answer is absolutely yes, because it's integrating something into a situation that, you know, now we have more than a handful of games. Like you said, it's about a month and a half. So therefore there is it can't possibly go bing, 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 bing. Perfect. Bing, bing, bing. Everything just is fluid. Like, wow, it's like you've never been gone. But it's undeniable that, and we've seen games like this with the Timberwolves over the last month, maybe, certainly during the time Karl Anthony Towns has been gone. And what I'm talking about, it was bottom end last Friday at Phoenix. I mean, they just couldn't score. And KD and Booker and Beal and all the right guys, Nurkic, I mean, they all came out and were like, if only for one night, let's treat this like Game 7 of the NBA championship of the Phoenix Suns early in that Friday night game. And it was like Wolves at Denver in the last game, where from A to Z, they weren't going to lose. It was hit legit top-level playoff performance. Well, the Suns did that to the Wolves. They couldn't get past 87 points. That right there, plus some other scenarios they've had over the last month where they've gone long patches trying to find points, that's where Karl Anthony Towns will really, really help, because attention will have to go from Edwards to him to a certain extent. They're still milking and feeding Rudy, specifically in certain matchups, like last night against a centerless team like Washington. And so therefore, that's why, from what I understand, they've been trying to get his offense going for about 3 months, just fluid and make it a play, you know, so teams know if we come down to you, it's not an immediate pass out. Rudy Gobert now is called upon to score a little more from the post. Well, that's getting attention. Then you get like Alexander Walker, Monte Morris, Jaden McDaniels. Their positivity with offense forever is on borrowed time. But Karl's is not. That's what Karl Anthony Towns does.
Yeah.
He scores. Of course, he can rebound, he can pass. Never been a big shot blocker, but he can block them. But Karl Anthony Towns scores from all over the court, and that's what they need. Now, on the other side of it, they have been dramatically quicker getting back on defense after missed shots or made shots against teams like OKC who just throw it in quickly and go, yeah. And Houston, I mean, that's another team that wants to run every second of every single game. Well, I know it's like if Nas and Cat raced 50 yards, I'd bet Nas, but I don't think he'd win by, a ton of lengths, but I'd bet Nas. I think he's faster than Karl Anthony Towns. He complains less when he feels he's fouled and didn't get the call. He runs back. where Carl, and it was a problem with Anthony. You can tell it was addressed. He's gotten a lot better at it, not complaining as much and making it 4-on-5 basketball. That's still a problem with Karl Anthony Towns. The complaining and getting into it with a ref or something. Karl Anthony Towns is on the ground more than any basketball player I've ever seen in my life. Whether he's falling, he's tripping, I don't know what's happening. He's always on the ground. And when that's the case, it's 4-on-5 terrorism. You got P.J. Washington in the corner burying threes and putting you in a bad spot where you lose to a team like Charlotte. So that's going to be something I believe they are going to have to overcome, is making sure he gets back on defense. Likewise for Rudy, likewise for Ant. The three best players, they can be at times some of the slowest and in most sluggardly fashion to get back quickly. Well, there ain't no tomorrow with that now when you get into the postseason. So, yeah, it's going to help. It'd be foolish for anybody to say having Cap back is not going to help. But I'm excited to watch him in playoff games and see how he responds to the way they're called. And they finish. So we got the Nuggets tonight, 9 o'clock on the Fan. Atlanta's here, I believe, Friday. And Phoenix is here Sunday. The Nuggets are at Wemby and at the Grizzlies. Now, Wemby and Vassell and that squad, that's not an instant W anymore for some reason. They're playing teams tight. They're beating teams like Phoenix without Wemby. So that's not a freebie. And the Nuggets have been no bargain on the road the entire year.
I can't even name anybody other than Wemby that's actually healthy and playing for the Spurs right now. They got Gonchar, I think. I forget what his name is. They got a couple, but those obscure guards, it's kind of like the Wizards.
Yep.
And they are taking every team to the wire.
It's unbelievable. It's the Greg Popovich factor.
Yeah.
Memphis, their final game, that's the Gonchar team.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, I mean, they're awful. So, and they know the next day is the off season.
Yep.
Well, no, excuse me. Sunday night's the off season. So I tell you right now, if they suit 15 players for the Memphis Grizzlies, I would lay the over under on how many of them already have round trip or one-way tickets to an exotic destination for Sunday night, unless it's a night game. I would lay the over under at 11.5. And the only reason it's not 14.5 is I'm sure Jaeger or whomever coaches them is making 4 of them stay back to deal with rehab and stuff like that. So that's what they have at the end. Oh, we just have Phoenix at the end. But you got to see where Phoenix is slotted and stuff, because Phoenix will sit Kevin Durant, Nurkic, and Bradley Beal if they're locked in.
Right.
They might sit Booker too. I would. Why play him in that game? Unless you're so spiteful, you're like, whoa, if the Wolves beat us to get the 1 seed. When you compensate Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal, you're not supposed to worry about who has the 1 seed. You know why? Because you're supposed to have it.
Correct.
And you don't. So
it's amazing, too, in the West right now. Like the Pels, it's a 2-game split between the Kings in the 8th spot and the Pels in 6. And the Suns are shoehorned in the middle.
Yep.
I mean, the grind between not doing the play-in, doing the play-in is so heavy right now for Phoenix.
Yep.
I think they come correct over the weekend. I think they need that game.
I think
one where.
Oh, when playoffs begin, I think they absolutely come correct. What I saw Friday night, if they have that in them 80% consistently, I mean, outside of Denver, they're going to the NBA Finals. If they can do that 8 out of 10 times. That was unbelievable what I saw Friday night. With the way Durant was emotionless in the game. It was steely. And if they all get like that and they're in concert and they share, wow, that's some high-end talent. All right, into the final hour, 9 to noon. That's News du Nord, courtesy of Canterbury Park and CanterburyPark.com. It's Paul Allen by your side. And when we return, we will unfurl some bike spites, setting up some talkbacks we will play later in the radio show. NFL draft-related talkbacks for draft party tickets. Don't leave. You're listening to KFAN.